Quick disclaimer. I described this Sheeraz versus Blanca fight as a world title fight. Obviously, it wasn't a world title fight. It was a final eliminator. My mistake. Enjoy.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for hanging around. All of you that didn't unsubscribe because I was not very active, but I'm back now, and we should be back with more content and back to usual. Right, we'll kick off straight away with Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, number 3. I started off watching this, and there's been a lot of talk about these two girls didn't want a repeat of, even if it was a subconscious or whatever. I don't think there was any sort of agreement between the two. But it seemed very much like these girls didn't want and didn't need another fucking all-out war like they had in the previous two fights. I'm someone, as we all are as boxing fans, and there's probably nothing that would make us more happy than to sit and watch a third version of the first two. But there's also a part of me that wants to see fighters leave this sport fit and healthy and with all their faculties intact. And those two fights were severely damaging for both girls, damaging in a way that they may not feel the effects for years. Nonetheless, I was quite bemused by the approach of Amanda Serrano. She came out, and for the first few early rounds, I thought, has Amanda Serrano, is her game plan to try and go first and third? Meaning that she would lead, Katie Taylor would try to counter that, and then Serrano would counter that, going first and third, drawing a response from Katie Taylor, and then landing her own shots, getting away. But she went about this in most rounds, and it was really quite weird for me to see, because she was throwing the jab followed by the backhand, or the double jab followed by the backhand, and she was doing it from way out of range. There were sometimes where these punches were falling almost a foot short, it looked like. And it didn't look to me that they were thrown with the intent of drawing something from Katie Taylor, not at all, because they were so far out of range. And she was throwing them. And you could see it's not healthy to throw almost full-blooded shots with snap and they not land. It's not good for you at all. But she was throwing these combinations, throwing them out from range, from way out of range, never bringing her feet in behind it. So they were never meaningful. And there were times in the corner where Amanda Serrano's team was saying, the plan's working, you're looking great, you're winning. Now, to me, this was not the case at all. If you compare to, I forget the guy's name who's Katie Taylor's trainer, but the advice that Katie Taylor's trainer was giving was really sound advice, really impressive work in the corner by him. But there was not a lot of action. There was not a lot to see. We can talk about Katie Taylor's age. Now, in terms of, is she slowing down? Hell no. Hell no. Her punches, when Serrano was throwing those shots in range enough for Katie Taylor to fire back and land, as I said, she was throwing from way out of distance before, which is not going to provoke a response from Katie Taylor in returning. When Serrano was sort of bringing her feet in a little bit more, throwing those punches, and Katie Taylor would just slip off the centre line and bounce back, she was throwing 3-4 punch combinations in an absolute fucking blur. Her hand speed was almost quicker than I've ever seen it. This was quite a hard fight to score in some ways. Now, for me, when rounds are really close, as this was, there was not a lot in it in terms of, I think Katie Taylor won, okay? I think Katie Taylor won for me quite clearly, and I'll say why, even though there didn't seem to be a lot in the rounds to differentiate the two. When I look at rounds that are close, where the action is close, where not a lot of landed punches, where there's not an obvious difference between the two for either fighter, I then look at, call it ring generalship if you want, but I then go to whose plan and whose attributes are being implemented more successfully in the way that they're navigating these rounds. And for me, Serrano's plan seemed to be to kind of keep Katie Taylor on the outside. And so that Serrano's not going to sustain damage, not get drawn into a fight in the way that she did in the first two fights. But for me, that Amanda Serrano's greatest asset is her fighting ability. Now, that's not going to lead to a happy, healthy life. I wouldn't have thought. That style is very, very taxing, and they've lost a lot. They've left a lot of themselves in the ring both times when they've fought. So I can understand the reason for not wanting to engage in an all-out war like I had done before. But every time you're keeping Katie Taylor on the outside, Katie Taylor's going to love that. You're playing right into Katie Taylor's hands. She's the better boxer, as in Serrano's probably a better fighter, I think. She's probably got the harder punch, possibly got the better chin. Katie Taylor not being much of a puncher. But when you're keeping Katie Taylor on the outside, when you're not forcing her to work, she's more than happy to sit at range and pickpocket when you do advance. And that's what she did. When Serrano did step into range, Katie Taylor would just take her head off the centre line, throw the backhand, move her head off the centre line, come back with a jab, and then the other combination, or the hook after the backhand. And that's what she did. And for me, although there wasn't many exchanges, I thought Katie Taylor was the more comfortable because of the way Serrano went about it, which was for me was wrong, and she ended up losing the fight for me more clearly than the first two because they were disputable. I thought in a lot of ways. I didn't think this was because I looked at Katie Taylor and I looked at her plan, which was not to get involved, to pickpocket, to throw those lightning fast combinations, to throw them punches in bunches and get out again. And that's what she did. And the more times Amanda Serrano elected to not engage and stay on the outside, Katie Taylor was at home. Amanda Serrano was almost doing Katie Taylor's job for her and made it really easy. You only had to look at sort of Katie Taylor's face at the end. You know, for her, relatively unmarked, especially compared to these other two Serrano fights. So I just found Serrano's tactics really, really weird because she would stand on the outside, double jab, backhand, almost a foot out of range. So it's not only is it expending energy, you're falling short. She had a lot of elaborated upper body movement and head movement, while Katie Taylor really just sat back and was happy for Serrano to do that all night long. And she did. So I just found it really weird. And then I found it weird that Serrano's corner were telling her, you're looking great, you're in front, this is yours. There was a moment in the last third of the fight where Serrano was on the stool and the trainer said to her, one of the occasions when he was saying to her, you're winning, you're better, this is yours, keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. And as he was saying that, Amanda Serrano's face said the complete opposite. To me, Amanda Serrano sat there and she knew, she was thinking to herself, I'm not winning, this plan's not working, I'm not winning, this is not working. Her face said it all. So her trainer's telling her one thing, you can probably guarantee in the corner, Amanda Serrano is way more aware of what she's doing wrong than corner work. Because Amanda Serrano's face said it all. And when they were reading out the scores at the end, Amanda Serrano, again, to me, had the look of someone who knows she'd lost and lost by quite a way. Not because she was massively outscored, not because she was hurt, but her game plan was wrong. It wasn't working, and that was evidence. Katie Taylor was in comfort zone for most of that fight. Compared to the other corner, I forget the guy's name, Katie Taylor's trainer's name, but he was also telling her to go to throw twos and ones, which means lead with a backhand, throw the jab afterwards, which is fucking brilliant advice. Beterbiev used this a lot, and it was one of the factors that led to him really winning the second fight for me and one of the major changes he made, because Beterbiev, in the exchanges with Bivol, in the first fight, he lost the exchanges because Bivol was sharper and faster, pivoted away, spun off and got his bike. In the second fight, Beterbiev would almost, near the end of the exchange, he would throw that backhand, and as Bivol was pivoting away and spinning off, he would then throw the jab and step across with it, essentially going twos and ones, which is brilliant. And this is what they told Katie Taylor to do as well. I just thought when you looked at the two fighters, you looked at who the fight and the style of the fight suited more. For me, undoubtedly suited Katie Taylor 100 times more than it did Serrano. Serrano looked to me troubled. I didn't think Serrano's game plan was working. I thought Katie Taylor looked comfortable, and Serrano played into her hands. And for me, when the rounds were hard to score in terms of punches landed and output, meaningful punches and all that, when you looked at the two, Katie Taylor was comfortable and happy to be where she was. Serrano wasn't comfortable. It wasn't working for her. So call it ring generalship, call it what you want. I thought Katie Taylor had a pretty easy time and a pretty comfortable time. And that was no doubt helped by Serrano's approach. But just to see Serrano round after round, she was throwing these combinations out there, jab, backhand, double jab, backhand, never moving them with her feet, never using it as bait, never using it as feints, really, just aimlessly throwing punches from distance, at which Katie Taylor had no reaction on. She knew she was out of range, didn't have nothing to do. Serrano's feet never came in with her, so Katie Taylor just stood there and let her just box at fresh air, which is essentially what she did. So I think Katie Taylor won that, for me, won it quite clearly, because she was the more comfortable. Her game plan was the more solid. Her game plan was working to the sort of extent that they wanted it to. Serrano's wasn't, for me. So that's how I score that. So Katie Taylor goes on. Will she retire now? Let her retire now. Amanda Serrano's a great fighter as well, but that was not the plan for her. But maybe the fact that they just thought, because we see these fights and we see them interviewed in the ring afterwards when adrenaline is still pumping. We don't see these fights for the next fortnight at home. We don't see how badly they are affected after this, after the adrenaline dump was gone the next day, the complete exhaustion, and when you start to feel the pain, because you don't feel it all night, you feel it later on that night or the next day. That's when it really hits home. So I thought Katie Taylor won. It was an interesting fight. It wasn't a classic. It was two girls who, to me, had made a conscious decision individually, camp by camp, to not engage in the sort of fucking bloodshed that they did in the first two fights. So, yeah, Katie Taylor for me, to me, was the winner for them reasons. Hamza Sheeraz against Berlanga. Now, for me, Sheeraz has arrived now, and you can talk about Berlanga not being all that and not being a great world champion, which, from a technical level, you probably have to agree with. But, we do remember Berlanga did go the distance with Canelo, and that could say a lot about where Canelo is now. It can say a lot about how Canelo approaches fights these days in a pretty one-dimensional, plodding manner against these guys that he doesn't really have to exert himself or take himself to the next level against. So we know all that about Berlanga, but this was still Sheeraz coming off the back of a bad performance by all accounts. Maybe it was a hand injury, maybe it was all that, but he was coming off a much criticised performance and one where he was lucky to get a decision. So he's now on the big stage, the world's eyes are on him, and he has got Berlanga is a world level fighter, certainly not elite, but world level, and Sheeraz is still pretty young in terms of his career, and you couldn't have asked for any more. I watched an interview with him, and first off, let me just say, Sheeraz just comes across as an absolutely fucking top bloke. Grounded, polite, gracious, humble, all the things you like in a person, all the qualities that you like to see in a person. So I thought Sheeraz come across great. And the fact that he was on a world stage, on a big card, against a legitimate world champion, world level, not elite level, as I said, he'd done it. And none of us really called. Well, I don't know. I didn't watch any predictions, but I certainly didn't see Sheeraz winning this by stoppage as he did. And in the interview I watched, he described himself and the way he let punches go and the way he finished Berlanga as Benavidez-esque. And he kind of was for me. When he said that, I thought, yeah, you know what? There were echoes of Benavidez there. And even that, he said, oh, yeah, I'm not trying to compare myself. Benavidez has been around more longer. He's fought higher opposition. He's a lot more experienced than me. So he was saying it in a really respectful way to Benavidez. But I kind of agreed in what he said. There were similarities between the way he throws his punches, the way he gets them off. Because Sheeraz is that tall, gangly, sometimes in Benavidez' career, he's looked a bit unorthodox. And it's down to just to the physiological makeup, and the body composition that they have. They sometimes don't look that graceful, don't look that sort of flowing or smooth. But the way he finished them was great. Full of confidence. Didn't seem to have any doubt. There was talks about Canelo next or Benavidez even. No, sorry, Canelo or Crawford. Now, I hate it when the boxing press fire these questions, because for me, Sheeraz needs to go on. He still needs more work, and there's time. Give him that more work. Don't rush him into those fights. He doesn't need that yet. Sheeraz himself would say, he's not at that level yet. And to put him in there now is to do him an injustice. It's not right. Let him still build. Yes, he's won a world championship. I don't know who the mandatories are. I'm assuming next it would be a voluntary anyway. Let's still build him a bit on a world stage. I'm fine with that. All it's about, well, if you're not good enough to defend the world title against all comers, you shouldn't have fought for a world title. Listen, professional boxing is about navigating a career, navigating a successful career. It's a sport, it's a business, and as much about being smart as it is about being a great fighter. So I don't have a problem that he's took the opportunity to win a world title. Now use that a bit. Still build yourself if you can. Build longevity to your career by doing that, And I'm not saying take just tomato cans, bum of the week, but let's see who you're going to take for a voluntary. Then I believe it would probably be a mandatory. Sorry, a voluntary, then a mandatory. Don't know who the mandatory is, but there's no need to rush him, essentially, especially not in fights against the likes of Crawford or Canelo. But really good, because Hamza Sheeraz just comes across as an absolute fucking top bloke. And I like him. And he's a great ambassador for the sport. In the interview, he also said that he wants to be world champion. He wants to be known as a fighter. But he wants to really put a positive role model out there, and wants to be a role model and be an inspiration and just be a good person, and radiate that. And fair play to him. Wish him all the success in the world. and well done to him. Absolutely fantastic performance, lit the place up. So well done, Hamza Sheeraz. Lastly, I don't know if any of you last week saw, Jim Lampley was on Joe Rogan, which this was, if you're a boxing fan, this was an absolute fucking joy and a pleasure, and I urge you all to go and watch it. He's got so many stories, anecdotal stories. As with Michael Buffer, Jim Lampley does seem to be a genuine boxing historian. His knowledge is fantastic. His stories are fantastic because of the relationships he's had with fighters over the years. The stories have got wonderful. He talked how that when he was at ABC Sport, the head of ABC Sport didn't like him, wanted to get rid of him. He told his agent that he doesn't like Jim, he wants rid of him. So he put him in charge of boxing or calling boxing, thinking that he would fail miserably and that would be the way to get Jim Lampley out the door. But Jim Lampley says, from 5 years old, my mum sat me down and my first fight I watched was a Ray Robinson fight. So boxing was my passion. But the head of ABC Sports sort of thought that he was following Howard Cosell, would never be able to do that, would never be able to fill them shoes, and that would be the death knell for Jim Lampley, which it wasn't. As we know, he turned out to be one of, I'm sure, one of your favourite callers of fights, that whole HBO team. And the rest is history. I mean, he told stories like he was talking about Foreman against Mora, and he said he had a good relationship with George Foreman. And he spoke to George Foreman in the lead up to the Mora fight. And he said, George, this guy's a southpaw. He's got great feet. He's a great athlete. He's very technical. How are you always going to beat this? And he said, George said to me at some point in that fight, Michael will stand in front of me and let me knock him out. And Jim said, and that's exactly what happened. He was exactly right. He's got so many good stories. He talked about how he had struck up a really good relationship with Jack Nicholson. He'd become like his golf partner, and they stuck up a really good friendship. And he's asking Jack Nicholson, you know, what do you sort of tell yourself when you're trying to deliver lines or deliver roles, as in like you can't handle the truth? A Few Good Men, and he said, Jack said to me, I tell myself the same thing I told myself at acting school. Jack, do not overact. And Jim says when Tyson was knocked out by Buster Douglas, that get into his head, and he said the count reached 5, 6, and he was thinking to himself, don't overact. And that's why, if you remember famously, Jim Lampley just says, Mike Tyson has been knocked out. Very matter-of-factly, not over-dramatic. I mean, it was one of the great sort of deliveries from Jim Lampley. But he said he had Jack Nicholson's words in his ears when he said that, don't overcook it. Mike Tyson has been knocked out, as he did. So just a wonderful, just so many anecdotal stories, so many sort of, relationships he had with fighters. He said he was talking to Canelo once, and he was talking about Canelo's chin, and Canelo said to him, it's not my chin that is fantastic. And he said it's down to the fact he rides horses. And if you've ever seen Canelo ride a horse, Bob, Canada's boxing channel, have you seen Canelo ride a horse? If you've ever seen Canelo ride a horse, he looks, not that I know fuck all about horse riding, but he said when you ride a horse, it's all lower body, strength in the core, strength in the legs. And Canelo said, that's where I get my good chin from my legs and my core, from riding horses. Not that I've got a great chin, but I can handle a shot and absorb it and stay rooted to the ground, that sort of thing. So that was great. He talked about, again, going back to Tyson and the Douglas fight, and he was talking about, again, as you all remember, the rubber glove or condom that was filled with water they were trying to use as an end swell. And he said in that moment, Mike was the only one in that corner that knew how vulnerable Mike was. The rest of them had so little knowledge and so little experience at doing this, they didn't have a clue. The stories go on, and the list is endless. The stories go on, and it's just about 2.5 hours of Jim Lampley talking about his relationships with Mary Stewart. He talked about how when Pacquiao was going to fight Floyd Mayweather, that people had said to him, this could be the one, Pacquiao. And he said, he told everyone before the fight, he said, this is going to be like watching someone pluck the legs off a spider. And it was never in doubt that Floyd was going to win. And he goes in depth to explain all that. But if you haven't seen that, go to Joe Rogan and look at the interview with Jim Lampley. If you're a boxing fan, if you're a fight fan, if you're a historian, it's an absolute joy to watch, and you'd be a fool to miss it. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you all soon.